Hello, it's Richard at Richard's Guitars, and today I've got something pretty mind-bending to tell you about, and probably won't even believe me, but, you know, because obviously a lot of stuff I say, I always know how unbelievable it might be if you're just not aware of the things I'm going to talk to you about. So it's always a bit awkward when I know that instantly people are going to get turned off by something that is so real and important to talk about. So please don't turn off and please continue watching. I'm hoping to podcast this stuff because I think some people have commented in the past that really it's better off just listening to a lot of stuff I talk about. And so you can listen to it in bed as you fall asleep. Listen to my dulcet tones as you sleep. So I want to tell you about what I witnessed as my business evolved in a very, very early time frame. And I do believe I was the first person to sell a guitar online, and it wasn't a guitar. In fact, it was an amp. And I'm not going to go on about that story either. But what I want to tell you is that in the earliest stages, and I mean before even adverts were appearing on television, I could see the power that was unfolding at my disposal. So it was very clear from a very early stage that this was something that couldn't be ignored, that you had to be part of. It's the future. And maybe because I did that first sale the way I did, and it wasn't in a kind of a normal kind of way, but it was all to do with the way I was using the way I wanted the website to help me. And very rapidly it did. I realized that this is great, but it's scary as well. Because what are the ramifications looking ahead? It's lovely that I'm here now, but what will the future hold? And kind of a bit like AI is now, you know, it's kind of like the second wave. And I want to say to myself, look, we've been here before, Rich. We can do it again. We can stay up. It's just that I got a few more grey hairs than I did. So hopefully I've got the energy to keep up. So from a very, very early point, I saw this great thing, but also what could be a terrible thing. Now, as I spent time in the industry selling guitars, I started to see a picture of how the industry worked, and my predisposed belief of how my perceptions of what I thought would be the industry were very different. And I'm not talking about quality and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the structure and how distributors weren't in big, glamorous offices very often. Very few of them were. More often than not, distributors were in pretty, not necessarily run down places, but pretty aging or small warehouses, that kind of thing, with an office. So that was an observation. And as I got involved in selling guitars, I was aware how little support distributors could give their retailers because they didn't have the infrastructure in place. It wasn't their fault. It was a natural consequence of it being a cottage industry. So I was seeing, you know, the MD would be a guy behind the desk over there, and then the sales guys would be on the phones or out in their cars or whatever. And so what this made me worry about is, with the growth of the business that I'm seeing, if it wasn't for the fact that my mentality, what I sought what I sought from life wasn't world domination. It was like, you know, you hear about. I don't know how clear it was in my mind then, but it always felt the same. But I presume it was the same, that I just loved the whole connection thing. So the direction I was coming from, and it was just the passion of doing it and enjoying the process, enjoying being able to have my own business and realizing, actually, Christ, I may be unemployable, but I can actually thrive on my own 2 feet. I can just be myself and just do my own thing. So I was more excited about just being able to live my life and enjoy being successful, if you like, being considered successful. But I wasn't interested in taking over the world. And what I saw was, what though about the people that don't see life the way I see it. This internet thing is really quite life-changing, as it was for me. And in the wrong hands, not in the wrong hands, but just a different pair of hands, this could be big trouble for the network, the dealer network in the UK. So, and it's really hard to explain to you where this thought process comes from. And I think it is only purely the way I do, well, for all the things I'm criticized about by my, haters or whatever, because I see everything as being connected. I always talk about everything is connected. The reason why I talk about everything being connected is because I've just seen it for as long as I can remember, that everything has a consequence and everything has it is the way it is. And beyond trying to explain it, other than that, you either believe what I'm saying or you don't. So I saw the consequences of this evolution and thought, well, how easy would it be for me to be doing more business than these distributors? So that was my first thought. So and I can't go into too much detail into each one of these stages, because as you can see as it unfolds, there are layers to this, and the solutions to everything that we're witnessing were in my best ability put in place 20 years ago. And when I say, I had these solutions, my brother was the IT guy, and he's far too intelligent for his own good, and he never held down a proper job. Well, unless you call working on guided missile systems at the age of 16 a good job, but that led him to depression and a breakdown. So he was a very, very clever guy. For a short period of time, worked on technology that kills people, and then decided that he'd rather do something more positive with his life. So he basically lives in the middle of nowhere in a forest with his organic toilet and that kind of stuff. So now, but in the interim, I wanted to use his skills to help me do something that I felt that could help what I call the ecosystem, the music, what I see as the musicians ecosystem. Because again, just like I was seeing as I was seeing the connection between my success and, for example, the first stepping stone would be the demise of the distributor. Because if you've got a shop that can do more business than a distributor, then you don't need the distributor. Simple as that. So that was a very clear thing. So how do we get distributors on board? Then distributors and retailers are now I'm seeing as two important parts of this. So the next step of my ecosystem was looking at, well, who buys this stuff? Well, it's obviously the guitarists, the musicians. So, and please don't get bored. Got to, in fact, what I'm going to do is that's why I got my, my important diagram board. So bear with me. And if you stick with me, if you don't stick with me, it's another example of why the whole freaking world is so doomed, because we don't have the attention span. I know I'm waffling. I know I'm rambling. But just stick with it. It'll only be an hour of your life, maybe 3. No, hopefully an hour. Just fast forward to the end or something. I don't know. Right, important diagram. So what we've got is me. So we got so we got shops. Oh my God, Red. Okay, I don't even know if you can read it there. So there's shops, and there's distribution. Ooh. I mean, and we'll just for the sake of it, manufacturers. I got bored of writing that word. I can spell it, but it's got a bit boring. I'll put yes on the end. Now, distributors and manufacturers. So then you have the musicians. So they're obviously a part of the ecosystem, because musicians, if you didn't know, they have to buy their stuff from shops, and shops, if you didn't know, generally buying their stuff from distributors. But we're already seeing the demise of that phase anyway. That bit's going. Sadly, and again, I'm not here to talk about the whole rights and wrongs. It's not about right and wrong. This is just a reality scenario. Right? Distributors, manufacturers, and not, in many cases, manufacturers are becoming the distributor. So, and I see all the arguments upwards and downwards, and obviously depending on the business, there is no right and wrong. Depending on the business, Some people will come from a point of view that a manufacturer won't have the relationship. Anyway, let's talk about that separately. That's another day. So these are the traditional bits that we have. But then what you have is the venues. Okay, so we've got venues. So if you like, this is what I was piecing together in my mind, that this was, to me, predominantly I did actually put in here tutors. Apologies to tutors, but you were in there as well. So I kind of, this was my picture, really. This was my main thing. If I remember anything else, it was 20 years ago. Give me a break. So we had shops, distributors, manufacturers, musicians, venues, and tutors. And to me, that was just like a simplified, like I try and do with everything, boiled down into a nutshell. That is our ecosystem. That is what each one relies on and thrives off the next. Of course, we can throw all this in because this was all in here anyway. So we had repairs, tech, doing repairs. I'll do a nice neat diagram for anybody who wants to download it. So we had that scribble, tech and repairs. And this is what you're seeing here. This is kind of how the mind was going at the time. Like, who's in the industry, and who do they rely on, and how can working together, again, this whole word that I'm always using, which I can never remember if I have to use it holistically. The holistic picture is that. And if you take any one of those out of the ecosystem, the ecosystem can't work. So without a distributor, you can't get the stuff to, traditionally, you can't get the products to the shops. Shops can't get it to the musicians. Musicians can't play them. Venues who rely on live music can't do that. Tutors can't teach them. The whole thing relies on everyone else. So what we did was we came up with something called Museet. Probably a terrible name, but we weren't really so worried about the name. It was really the principle of it that mattered. So what I said to my brother was, we're going to save the industry. At the time, I had literally clear as day, I can remember it. I think I felt like I was cheating with the internet, and I just thought that the rapid growth of my own business. I think I had difficulty just even with the success of it. Just didn't want to be part of that. To understand all of the logic behind this and the meaning of it, you'd have to understand the viewpoints of the people behind it. And my brother and his views on life, and corporations, big business, centralization of power. There's a lot of things that have been considered as complete conspiracy for decades in my lifetime. Who, I don't know why, but the people who saw it couldn't understand why the others couldn't. And I don't know what, I can't give you those answers why some people just saw it, or maybe the people who saw it were just lucky in that, and maybe there were 1,000 other thought processes that didn't come to fruition, and the ones that Antony and myself were having were just kind of aligned and misinformed at the time, but it just happened to come true, whatever. So I saw what was happening in my business as a problem. I couldn't enjoy it because I knew there was probably some other meaning to it, something else that it was telling me, something I needed to do sorry, there's all sorts of things going on my phones and people trying to ring me and different things. So I'm hoping to God this will just keep recording, which I'm sure it is. Okay. So what I said, I explained the logic to my brother, and I said, no, but Ant, this is something that we can do that gives you a job, gives you employment, it gives you an income. I can feel like it's giving me something greater than what I am giving to society now. And it sounds terrible, but I literally said to my wife, I don't want it to say on my tombstone, ran a great guitar shop. And that's a terrible thing to say. And now looking back, anyone would say, well, you should have been more selfish, Rich. You shouldn't have listened to that one. But like you say, everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't be the person I am now if we hadn't been through this process. So there is again, it's not about judgment or anything. It's just literally, that's how I felt at the time. And I wanted to do something that showed if you like, that we could do something like our legacy could be using the internet in a way that actually deconstructs what is naturally happening in the world around us. In other words, it was like an opportunity to fight back against corporate growth, centralization of power, and basically the loss of real human connection, which is ultimately where it's all going. And why I do all the stuff I do, because it's almost like an antidote to what I'm witnessing every day. Told Antony what needs to be done, and he literally did it. And I'm going to give you a very brief, basic outline of what it did and how this, if had been adopted, would have, without question, been certainly a solution in a stage in time for what you're witnessing now on the high street. Because what it did was it made sure that it's almost communist in its style. I hate to say this, but it's almost like, I've never thought of it as a communist plan before. But as I thought about what to say, the word communism came to my head, because kind of what it's doing is it's spreading everything out. And it's making sure that everybody gains from the ecosystem that exists and everyone is able to thrive. That was always the idea. So what you had was, we created, let's start here, because it kind of started here. Boom. We put distribution and manufacturing at the heart of the system. So as a brand, in other words, the brands, we created brand websites for the manufacturers. And it's important to state, by the way, all of this functioned, all of this was real, it happened. And I will tell you what happened to it. So thanks to the MIA. Cheers, guys. So if you want to talk about this, speak to your local MIA officer or whoever's in charge these days. So, can't say that. Never mind. Done. Right. So distribution, create the website, we create the products go into a database. And I don't know where Amazon was in these days, but about year 2000 this was. But wherever was going on in the year 2000, it'd be interesting to see where Amazon was in the year 2000, because it's certainly, you can argue, follows what you might consider an Amazon style approach here at this point. But the difference being is independently branded, obviously the manufacturer's brand, their website. So what do distributors want? They want to pass people to shops. Distributors want shops to sell their gear. And so what we did was we provided every distributor with a dealer list, okay? But they didn't have to, once the data, the basic addresses, name addresses, and phone numbers were put in by myself individually, in those days, that kind of thing, they had access to a list of a blank canvas of dealers. All they had to do was mark the dealers that were like a checklist for their brand. And then that was their dealer network. Now, as well as having a dealer list, we put in technology that I've never seen actually, I don't believe to this day exists, which was that I would encourage people, the idea was to encourage people to look at products and ask questions. If a person looked at a close-up image of the guitar or whatever the product was, got to remember, this is 20 years ago, right? So get with me here. Even by today's standards, this is not something that is available. And I'm basically giving somebody a blueprint, by the way, of something else now, if they want to do it. Because as I said, if I'd done this in the car industry, I'd probably be a rich man now. But hey-ho, I sell guitars. The distributor, what was I saying? Yeah, so if you clicked on a photograph within the distributor's website, that would be recorded as a view of that closer. Guitars being specifically with guitars, or maybe anything with anything that needs to look at the detail. If someone's looking at a close-up, it tells me that there's an extra level of interest. You know, it has to be slightly more interested than someone who hasn't clicked on a close-up. And when you clicked on that close-up, it would encourage you to ask a question about the product. The customer asked a question about the product, and that question would be literally passed on to the local dealer. That question would. So the question would be always sent to the local dealer. obviously encouraging local business, communication in real world. These guys now have an attribute that they can sell to their shops, that we can support you in a proactive way, which prior to this, they couldn't. So distributor has that as a bonus. Right. The musicians who are obviously asking these questions, this musician can say, well, where can I find that in stock? Now, currently, even in today's technology, right now, if you want to find that guitar in stock, you would go to Google and you'd pay, and the shops, like myself, are paying a small fortune to be found, right? Because there is no support system there. If there was a support system, I wouldn't have to rely on Google, which costs me thousands of pounds every month. Every month, I'm spending thousands of pounds on Google advertising. So, corporates have got me by the bits because I don't have any other mechanism outside of my, obviously, everything, the things that are going on that. So anyone who relies on just, anyway, that's a separate thing as well. So, where was I? Shops. Where was I? Yeah. So if they wanted to check if something was in stock, this guy in this shop would get every morning on his doorstep, in his inbox, he would get a shopping list. And in that shopping list would be every product that has been checked for to see whether it is in stock currently. And he would see all of them, all of the products, but it would grey out the items that were not being sought, that they weren't a dealer for. So the dealer could either become a dealer of that brand and take advantage of these inquiries, or just accept that they don't sell them, but be aware that there's quite a lot of inquiries coming in from different brands. Now, I don't know whether I skipped ahead from going from, so just to be clear, you had the close-up, the question always went locally, and that was an email. But every day you'd have every dealer would have a digest of all of the people who are looking to try guitars or instruments in the local area, because the system was postcode driven, and it asked for the customer for the postcode as they navigate around the website. So what we were then able to do back to the distributors is provide them with incredible levels of statistics. And the statistics would be telling them, everything that they needed to know, inquiry rates, what the most sought after products were, what items were out of stock more often, and all this sort of thing. Now, what that then gave them the power to do is talk to the dealer again, because the classic argument a dealer will say is, oh, we can't sell them. Can't sell those. It's not going to happen. Nobody wants those. And they can go, well, for a start, the dealer may well have contacted the distributor after seeing these grayed out inquiries all the time, going, I've never sold one of those. Well, you may not have done, but that might have been guided by your point of view, your belief currently, or, just maybe you sell other products which are in a different sort of niche and you weren't aware that that product was in demand. So we were giving manufacturers power, or distributors power, to provide support, educate dealers. We were giving dealers the ability to sell more locally, keeping the connection between musicians, keeping musicians in going into shops. So this was the key, that musicians always saw shops as their central hub of their world. And that's what obviously we're losing by the day. And some of the greatest shops I remember when I was a teenager, when most of the shops that I modeled myself on, I didn't even visit them really. One of them I did, but others were just almost like you could argue it's just an image, just like it would be with me with Gibson when I wanted to be a Gibson dealer. And then, you realize the truth behind the brand, and it's like, so it could have been one of those. But sound control I mentioned in a bit, but it wasn't sound control. Why did I say sound control then? I meant to say, what were they called? Oh my God. Oh no, I'm going to hate myself if I don't say this. It was such a lovely shop. I do this all the time with words. Because I said sound control, but I've blasted my mind. I can't think of any other word. Well, anyway, that one will come back in a minute. Oh, sorry, guys. I'll put a note on it one day. But it was a lovely shop that I heard about up north that sadly went out of business. And then there was Guitar Gallery, a lovely guy in Oxford. area. Beautiful little shop. Mind you, it was absolutely stacked out, and it wasn't surprising, you know, on reflection, that you had so much gear in there. And if you don't have a really strong online presence to support that level of stock, I can see their name, the shop I keep thinking of. Jesus, terrible. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. So, but nice shops, a lot of the nice shops that I always grew up with have gone. And you're getting this great, bigger and bigger divide between very, very well polished, because it's all about marketing, isn't it? So the world has become all about now how well you present a veneer, a picture of your business. I did some research into the owners of the businesses that run the most successful shops in the UK. And it's pretty impossible to even get a profile beyond the very well choreographed, because one or two of them I know, and one or two of them I know about. And it's like, how do you get this disparity between what is said and what is perceived, and what, you know, it's just the same old that you get once you get into the industry. You slice back the layers, and you find it's all crap. So it's difficult to know how anyone is gonna, you know, it's difficult to know what the right path is. But let me get back to my point I'm making, which is that at the time, musicians went into shops. When the internet came out, I had rep after rep after rep coming into my shop saying the same thing. The internet may grow, but guitars will always be sold in shops, because there was that understanding, that absolute understanding that it was tangible. You had to hear it with your own ears and connect with the whole thing in an incredibly tangible way. Now, whilst I would love to think that that would have been true, the only thing that really safeguards me, I think, in any way, in any capacity, is my desire to educate, like talk and have an opinion, to the point where if you don't believe me, it would be an incredible act, because I'm laying out my entire life all the time, which is the complete opposite to anything you ever see in any other shop. It's about perception. The reality is, somewhere in here, there's lots of people like me. Lots of people like me in there. But sadly, you don't see them. And you don't see them because they don't have posh online stores. They weren't lucky, let's say, to be immersed in the industry at a point where I was, where it became obvious to me I needed to do that. It was like born at a similar time to when I was born in my business. So I saw it and grew up with it, just like a young child will grow up with an iPhone and become far more used to it than I would be. So I get that the dinosaurs of the industry, and that's sad, isn't it? These are the dinosaurs. They're all dying out. Well, those dinosaurs are the ones that actually quite often give a damn about, not all of them. I've been to many, many shops, and again, doing this, Museet, this is actually where my experience is, because I actually, I'm sorry. I've been eating granola. Suddenly, sorry. I met some lovely, lovely people in shops. Was it? I know I'm not going to mention names. Can't do that. Be unfair. And but some of the shops I went into, I was like, I just wanted to get home. And in fact, when I had my sort of episode, when I closed down my old business, I contacted one of my sort of close contacts in the trade and said, well, look, would you give me a job if I can't do this anymore? Would you employ me? And very sincerely, he said, Richard, I wouldn't employ you. He said, because I see what being in the industry does to you and what it's done to you just from obviously this stuff that I was doing. And he said, it would kill you being immersed in that every day. And that's from a director of a distributor, because they see the apathy, they see the short-sighted nature. You've got all sorts in the industry, some that care, some that don't, some that just want to make a quick profit. It's just human nature, a whole myriad. And you could argue that maybe the ones that had the professional attitude and are being rightly rewarded for their insight, their desire to utilize the technology available doesn't make them bad. None of the online stores that I'm ever thinking about are bad people or bad business. You know, they're not. But it's just that it's taking us in a direction that is inevitable. They're part of a storyline. So all those online stores, mine included, whatever, are all part of a story of the direction. And the direction that I am trying to achieve in my lifetime is one that pulls back from the natural flow of what is happening in the world in every industry, to the point where it won't, obviously I'm talking about guitars, but this is just a mirror of everything that's happening in the world. So the ability to have real choice, a real ability to lay your hands on something tangible. And you know, one of the things that I am proud of when I do my videos is that I hope to God somebody will value the fact that we do. I'm going to tell you now, sorry, I'm flipping, but I tell every customer this. If you have a local shop that can supply you the guitar that I'm going to supply you, and you trust them, and you know they'll look after you long term, and you know they'll set up the guitar in the same way that we will, and they'll provide you the 6 and 12 month checks and resets, give you all that genuine sincerity. I could even say, obviously, if they're there at your beck and call, like I am on my live chat. If you've got all of that, then why the hell are you buying it from me? The only reason you then buy it from me is purely on price. And I know, pound for pound, nobody should ever need to buy any guitar anywhere else than my shop if the price is the same. Because nobody can match what I do. I'm just telling you that nobody matches what I do. I'm just going to lay that one out there, because that's my conviction. It's my truth. I don't believe there is any dealer that the owner of the business lays his heart and soul on the line, only sells products that he believes in, only sells products that he knows he'd recommend to his best friend, make sure that every single guitar he sells is professionally set up, not some tweak, not some BS marketing slogan. Just ask yourself, do the maths. You know, if there's a shop that's selling 20 guitars a day, well, each one of those guitars takes, to be done to our standard, an hour and a half. Do the maths. How many techs would you need? All those techs have got to be employed. It isn't real. If you are offered a next day delivery, it is not being set up. Unless it's Joe Blogg's shop that he's not even on the internet, and he's so quiet that you can just walk in. And I always say, never trust a tech that can put his hand straight on your guitar. Because think about it. Why? What? If you're the only person in the world that wants to get a guitar set up by that person right now, they've not done a very good job of the repeat business, let's say. So it's real. But people don't want to hear real. They want to hear BS. They want to hear, yeah, next day delivery. Yeah, and we do all of what they do. Yeah, we do that. And yeah, well, okay, well, find any personal testament of any owner of any large scale business. Do you know that person? Can you find a testimonial? Can you find a word that has been said about the individual that owns the business? You won't find it. You will only find very choreographed, controlled environments that want to portray a veneer, an image of that business. So when people get offended by my opinions and offended, be freaking grateful that you can be offended by me. You know, be offended. That's fine. But at least you're having a human interaction. You're being offended. Fine. I don't want you to be offended. It's not my intention. But I hope you can see what I'm saying. That we need human connections, or we are pretty screwed. So, I've veneered, I've meandered, I've meandered. What have I done? I've veered. I've veered into a different direction. So back to the important diagram. So we created that manufacturers' websites. We created retailer profiles. The retailer profiles had everything on there so lots of shops didn't have websites, but we knew that if we could allow shops to create their identity, let's say create, but to show their identity through the manufacturers' websites, that was so important, because no longer did you have a dealer list. You had basically like an interactive dealer list, a dealer list where you could get to know the shop, know their values, know whether they've got a tech on site, what the brands they stock, and really, get to know that business, just like you would do now with a website, but this is 20 years ago. Some of these shops still don't have websites. Well, they've probably gone out of business by now, but some don't. And some shops just don't want a website. Some shops do not need one because they're nearly retired off, or they've had lots of money, and so there are those examples that don't need a website. I'll tell you, well done to them. But the distributors' websites would link to the profiles of the dealers. Then musicians all had the same thing, and so did venues. So musicians could have their profile, their gig guides, their dates that they're doing their gigs. And when they do their gig guide, it links into the venue. So musicians could now go to a venue, and musicians could go to the venue, seek venues, see who does live music, because they would look at their profile. They would then be attracting the right musicians to them. These guys, and this is where it gets really, really awesome. Well, it would be awesome, but it's actually really tragic, because this is the bit I would have loved to have seen evolve beyond where it did. Distributors and retailers both had in their websites gig guides. So imagine if you could now go to the Gibson website. They don't give a shit about what the local venues are up to. They're corporates. They're not you. They're not you and me. The people that are at the top of those ladders, they don't give a damn about the venues. They don't give a damn about the musicians. If they gave a damn about the musicians, they'd make better guitars. So, you wouldn't have the appalling quality control. You wouldn't have the appalling record historically of how, nothing I'm saying is vindictive. It's just evidenced by what you can find online if you look for it. Glassdoor.com. It's been a few years since I looked at it now. But at one point, it was like CEO approval was like 1 out of 10 or something. Yeah, you have to look at it. I'm not saying I remember the exact numbers, but I'm telling you, it was appalling. And the feedback from people who work there. So on every level, the retailer experience, the people who worked there experience, the people who actually find these damn guitars in shops. For years, I was throwing red sheets of paper in the bin that was the 25% off list for Gibson seconds that were sold through Rossetti, the UK distributor. So the UK distributor was basically selling seconds at 25% off into shops. And when I looked into it, because I thought, this can't be right, because at the time, everybody, there was a shop up north in Scotland. I better not mention the name, but it was a website, and it was all on eBay. You used to be able to get Gibson guitars all over eBay that were all seconds, clearly, and they were being sold at less than trade price. And the reason why they were being sold at less than trade price is because the UK distributor had a retrospective discount. I forget the exact numbers, but it was huge. If you did 100 grand in a quarter, you got this massive rebate. And so people would sell the guitars at trade price in order to get a rebate back in 3 months' time. That's how pathetic it was. And none of it had anything to do with quality, respect, or it was pure bulk buying, bulk selling mentality. And I'm not convinced that mentality has changed in Gibson. Beyond the need to adapt as people slowly realize they don't need one. You can see what they are. Gibson is a completely different subject, because I could bore you all with the history. Music Yo, back in the thing, Music Yo was a website that Gibson created so that they could buy up brands, sell them direct. This is like 20 years ago. This is what they were doing 20 years ago. Gibson's desire to sell direct, which is now evident on their, Gibson's contempt for the industry is clear to see and can be observed. And none of this is I am not telling you anything as fact. I always say to everybody, challenge everything I say, investigate everything I say. For God's sake, take nothing I say to you as read. Don't even believe me about this if you don't want to. Obviously, I'll give you references. But challenge everything. Because nothing you see is real most of the time. So, distributors. So this was the great thing. A retailer's website would have the gig guide on it. So my customers who are coming to my shop, now remember, if I've just been to the manufacturer's website, I've been diverted to this website because it's my local shop. So I'm now in their profile, and now I'm naturally looking at what's going on in my local area, and I'm seeing gigs. And then from the venues profile, I'm learning about the musicians, and it's just the whole thing. And then obviously you got the tutors and the techs and the repairs. So your local, we talk about, that word I always use, but, whatever it is. What's that word? Ecosystem. So you got one massive ecosystem. If you think about it, the whole world is one big ecosystem. And then what you tend to see is little sort of bubbles of mirroring. It's just like you might look at the rivers. If you look at the river networks flowing into the sea, you'll see these repeating patterns. It's all the same thing. And you can see things with arteries and blood, and your body and biology, and see that happening in life around you. It's incredible. Everything is connected. Everything is very, very much intertwined. And that's why I kind of think in terms of ecosystems. And this ecosystem was what it was. And we enabled that ecosystem to exist, in my opinion, how I could see it. So that all happened. That was created. This ecosystem was created. And immediately that I created this, or my brother created it, and I sort of designed it, if you like, the flow of it. My brother's a musician too, by the way. He's a singer. I'll put a link to his YouTube thing. He's 55 now, still singing and got a great voice. I love his music. It's great. When I hear him sing, it's great. That's that. What happened? Okay. The biggest ambassador for my uptake of this in the early stages was always going to be the people that I know as brands in who I'm selling guitars to. So the biggest one was Tanglewood. Tanglewood. So Tanglewood, I love the brand. I talk about ecosystems or whatever else, but Tanglewood was made by Court. So Tanglewood at the time were Court. The reason why I'm putting that in is because, again, it's all like, it's off the screen. I've got coloured bits. I don't need those. Anyway, Court's just there. That's Thumper, my rabbit that died. He was a family pet. He was a house rabbit. And anyway, that's not him. I feel like I need to tell him now not to be offended. So, right, now, so, now then, the Court is a Tanglewood, because I never, this was my early days learnings of, oh wow, this amazing brand is all made by this factory here. And then there was some politics that kicked off. And then I found out that all of the Tanglewood guitars had exactly the same names as the Court guitars. And so they had a fallout. Court wanted to come into the UK direct, which they did in the end. But they said to Tanglewood, you got to change all your names, because I think I don't know why, but I mean, it came across that they'd been a little bit complacent in bothering to change the names, because as far as they were concerned, Tanglewood was tangled in the UK, and that would never happen. So they could just call the model codes what they wanted. But obviously Court, being another corporate that's grown and grown and grown, they can do what they like. So they came in and said no. So Tanglewood ended up being a completely different brand. So Tanglewood is no longer a Court, and it hasn't been for 20 odd years. And it was another one of the reasons why I closed down my business in depression, because I couldn't cope with the reality that my best brand at that price was no longer there, didn't exist. And everybody was coming in expecting me to sell them one. And basically it meant that you had to lie, and you had to just be part of the system, really. Yeah, they're great. Not ever seen one of those before in my life, but I know it's got the same name, or, this is their new version of that guitar, but, it's just... So it's difficult when you actually want to tell someone a truth. Business is really hard. Now, the reason I'm mentioning Tanglewood had 5 agents. And I want to just use one of the examples of Tanglewood as another example of, an example of life, business, human nature. One particular, there were 2. My personal rep was called Paul Newton. Hello, Paul. I haven't seen you for a few years, but Lovely to say hello. Hello, Paul. Paul Newton was wonderful, and he got all his dealers on board. And I think we had a subscription of £99 for the year, because that's how we made money. The only way this system could work is if the dealers understood the value. So it was £99, and that's basically, and then there was a fee for the, and over time we'd been able to have sort of just chiseled it up in another way, but we didn't want price to be an issue, but it had to be paid for. You can't just do all this. All of a sudden I feel like I'm a drugs company trying to sell you why I've patented the latest drug I've developed, and I'm going to charge you thousands of pounds for it. But it was £99 subscription for a year, and that's where you get everyone's got an argument against it. So distributors paid, I think it was like 1,500 quid for their package. I can't remember everything, all the statistics and all the years stuff, and then the dealers would pay £99. All of Paul's area that he worked in got on board, most of them. And then there was one other rep out of the four or five, whatever it was. And his name was Ian Collins. And I didn't know him at the time. But through that scheme, we became really good friends. And to this day, we're very, very good friends. And I don't see him as much as I should, like everybody in my life who I care for. But he's always just been absolutely one of those people, one of the rare people that what you see is what you get. He is what he is. However he presents himself, that's the person. And Paul's other half, which I won't discuss because I've got some negative history, believe it or not, with him, was like, nah, I can't get them on board. It's just like people don't want to do it. It's like, they want to buy the guitars and they don't want to hear me doing a £99 salon and thing. What I realized was, that was the first insight that I had into trust, and the difference between a salesman and somebody you just can sell to you, but with trust, because this other person didn't have that relationship. It was all about the hard sell, all about getting the stuff pushed in for dealers. And that then opened my understanding as I got out to the wider circle of brands. So my way of representing the product was through the distributors. So I needed reps on the road to just mention it, literally mention it, and have an awareness of the importance and all this stuff. That was nigh on impossible to do. I thought this was going to be a walk in the park. I thought doing the technology would be the hard bit. The hard bit was getting a rep who's on commission to dedicate 10 minutes of his time, half an hour, in talking about something that even the rep might not realize how important it is. The shop might not know how important it is. But somehow I need them to have that conversation so that the distributor can support them through the scheme. Ian Collins went to his shops and just it took him maybe just a few weeks to get every single person on the system. And when I said, well, how did you do that? I'm getting all sorts of kickback from so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And the answer was, Rich, it's a no-brainer. I just told them what it does. He said that really there was no conversation. It was just, I told them what it did and told them it's just going to give them so much more support, business, more sales. He said, why would there be and I was like, you won't believe some of the stuff I'm hearing. And so that was a kind of a first insight into a little bit of what you might call politics and layers, and why different things might seem obvious and things that should work can sometimes be scuppered by things completely out of your control. Because to this point, I was in control of everything. I was in control of the idea, the development, and the technology, get my brother to do that side of it. I knew how it needed to be represented. I knew how to represent the venues and stuff. But without the distributors on board, that was the crux of it, right? So all of these people loved it. Everyone loved it. But the distributors, if they weren't completely savvy with getting their business in order, then their reps on the road didn't really know what to say. And if they didn't prioritize it, so I got people involved. Companies want to be involved, but then you find that they're so disorganized that their bit of that chain would break down. And again, the whole thing, everything connected, all the things have to be in place. The break in the dysfunction was here in the distributors. Now, so I knew that this wasn't going to be as easy as I hoped it would be, because I was hoping I could now get focused back on my business. Because clearly my business is struggling. I've got my own issues going on with management and things going on because I'm no longer running my shop. I'm too busy trying to be saving the world. Yeah, that's the dramatic, didn't mean it. But I saw this thing of saving my industry. I'll be quite brutally honest. This was a safeguard. This was my safety net to my own business. This was my way of knowing that if I create something that, if you go back to my original point, I don't want to take over the world. But if I was wanting to take over the world, I could have adapted my own little business plan to take over the world. And that's why when I closed my shop down, I had stripped back so many layers of business, and I was still doing £2 million and still selling 10 guitars a day. And I closed it down with depression, bankrupt, because I spent it all on this, paying my brother. Because I never, ever, sorry, I don't mean to blame you, Ant, sorry, Ant, not blaming you. Yeah. And my brother had to have employment through this. So I was paying my brother, that's what I'm saying. And I was employing other people too, which again, I won't go into the whole list, but there were several people employed to get this over the line to the point where, because I had that blinkered belief system that this can't fail. You know, I'd think of like the light bulb and all that kind of stuff, and the amount of times that someone tried to create electricity and failed, but then in the end they got it through. And so I was kind of blindly driven by the belief that what I knew needed to happen would be enough to make it work, like for people to recognize its need, if that makes sense. So I thought, right, we need to bypass these people. We need somebody more important. And that's where the MIA comes in. So the Music Industry Association. So the Music Industry Association was sold to me as an idea that I always thought of it. Maybe maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it remains. It still exists now, but it was sold as a support organization, a system to support the music industry. This important diagram basically reflects what I thought the MIA was there to support. And so I contacted them and explained, I think it was Michael Kelly, his name. Was it Michael? I don't know now whether he was the original or not. I think the original guy I spoke to was a relatively older guy, retiring. And I think his name was Mike Kelly. And I remember driving somewhere down south, could have been Bournemouth, anyone can tell me if that's right. And I believe it was like a little white building, if I remember. And again, it was just like a tiny little set of offices. This really non-entity place. Just so that's that. It was just this. So the Music Industry Association was this office, and I remember sitting down with, let's call him Mike Kelly, unless I got that wrong. And I showed him what it did, and I said to him, I don't need anything from this. I don't want any money out of this. I need to get back to my business and do my thing. I did this because I need it to work. I want this infrastructure in place. I said, but there's one person that needs a job, and that's my brother. He's the best tech you'll ever have, and he's not a man of heavy means. Like you know, he really couldn't live a more simple and he's not a what do you call it, materialistic person in any way, and he just needs a basic income that he can keep this running himself. And you will just basically, for the cost of my brother's wage and the basic costs, running costs, you would have the most powerful system that basically puts you where you need to be. And he says to me, his words, I'll try and say to them exactly as they came out of his mouth, this is everything that we should be and would be if we had the resources. And I said, well, now you have. And I thought that was the moment where history was made. This was the point where the network of retailers that we now see disappearing everywhere, that would be the point where that legacy that I was kind of hoping for, just in my own mind, just so I felt like I did do something more than just my guitar shop. That legacy would mean something to me. Maybe now I have grandchildren and I could talk to them about my involvement in the industry and what I did. So it went to the first meeting, the board meeting. Now, when I'm telling you these stories, I don't want you to think of these in isolation, right? Think about your industry, think about your life, or think about politics. Think about what you're told, okay? So we've got the MIA, the support network, the people that are there designed to, so let's think, the World Trade Organization, or all of these kind of political kind of sort of support systems. But I won't get too political with it all, but think of any support system that's put in place that is sold to you on the basis that they're there to do good work. Okay. That's what we're talking about here. So it went to the first meeting and it was out of hand rejected. Okay. So the system was denied any further interest from the MIA. So I got the call to explain to me about that. And then I looked at how can I go from the top guy of the Music Industry Association telling me exactly what I needed to hear, which is it is everything that they should be and would be if they had the resources, to not even getting past first base. And the reason was, when I looked at it, in the day, if you go back to 2000 and whatever that was, 2005, whatever it was, by this point, it probably was about 2005, 2006. The big players in the industry were things like Sound Control, Academy of Sound. Those were the two that spring to mind. Sound Control, Academy of Sound. And the owners of those businesses, were on the board of the MIA. They've since gone out of business, I think. But point being is, you start to add things together. Well, this utopian system where everybody is equal and everyone gets their supply to them based on their locality, based on community building and all that kind of thing, connection that I'm all going about. That one man's utopia is another man's hell, because there are businesses that are in place that are absolutely designed to sweep up the local business. Those online stores, as they were evolving, knew that this was not going to be beneficial to them, because even though they've got chain stores, so they would get their value, their real power was in their internet profile. And obviously, I don't want to mention names, current names, but there are the best models, I think, in terms of profit and making the money are shops that have kept things relatively real in terms of the day-to-day trading, and then have a strong online side to them. It would be incredibly hard to justify multiple shops these days with the overheads that are there. I'm not saying it can't be done, but from a point of view of knowing how hard it is for me to manage, I've often said it. I have one shop. The difficulty of finding one person that won't let you down, let alone a shop full. I mean, it's unreal. Good people are ridiculously hard to find. And even good people will more often than not let you down at some point. You've just got to deal with it when it happens. And but generally there's a lot of dirge, a lot of people that are apathetic, not interested, don't have your best interest, would quite happily steal some money out your till. And I have employed so many people who I have treated so well. I mean, again, you might hear otherwise. I have the same mentality I've got with you is how I treat everybody, even down to work experience lads. I've seen work experience lads when I've gone into my own shop in the past and they've been sitting in the corner. And I'm like, what are you doing? They haven't given me anything to do. And I've got the manager and I go, how is that helping us? How is that helping him? How is that helping him develop as a human being? His insight into us. What does it say about our reputation that he just thinks you don't give a damn about him? Every one of these things has got a story, but I'm going to try and stick to what I'm talking about. So the politics was that there were big people. Oh, and what did you get as the big? I mean, this says it all really. At the time, the MIA's big kind of pulling factor for members of the MIA. Lukey, I'm on this. Sorry. Was that I was gonna do that without an edit. I can't believe it. I've been here for 1 hour and 8 minutes, and he did the naughty because he knows he should have, because I've got the signs outside. Never mind, I'll sort it out. I need to put you out of your misery, so let's keep going. So these large distribution and retailers, they got special deals at the what was called the BMF at the time, British Music Fair, the British Music Fair in Birmingham, I think, in London or Birmingham. I think. So the BMF it was called, and that was the big showcase at the time. At the time, it was a big deal. Manufacturers would all come in. Well, they would all get discounted rates at the BMF for being a member of the MIA. So you would have these big retailers putting on stands. They've got the discounts, and so there's always sort of intertwining of relationships that supersede the industry as a whole. And now, sadly, there's a contentious bit coming up now and this is where it's important to be open-minded, and I certainly have been open-minded to the point of absolute, I have nothing but respect for the man involved. So the most respect I've ever had for anybody in my life in business is a man called Mr. Skews, John Hornby Skews. And I have to be ever so careful how I talk about this because he passed away not too long ago, passed away a while ago. So, which was extremely sad, and obviously, and he was highly respected, highly regarded, and that one man gave me, more clues on how to be a person than most will ever do. And so this is the crazy thing, is on the face of it, what he did was completely scuppered my scheme. So, and John, I do not hold this against you or any way. So basically, this guy that I put on a pedestal, who I, loved as a human being very much, and he completely destroyed all my work. Now, this is why it's important to always be philosophical about these things and try and understand things from different perspectives. And this is it's the wider picture I'm trying to tell you about here, which is the politics. Politics always covers the truth, if you like. So things that are put in place that are there to protect you often have other angles and other things that you have no idea about, as I experienced here. Because if this was all about looking after the industry, this would exist. But because it was seen as a danger and it removed power from the powerful, it wasn't allowed to go ahead. Now, let me just explain the thing about Mr. Skews, because it's ever so important, because what he did was lovely. And in no way underhand. This is important. I would never disrespect, and I don't want anyone to ever say that because it's important I speak truth, and it's really important, especially when it's someone I respect so much, and in terms of respect to his family and everyone, it's like it's incredibly important this gets across. So I got a phone call from Mr. Skews. I still call him Mr. Skews. I've never called him anything else. It's Mr. Skews. The distributor is John Hornby Skews. So it's his name's John, but I've never called him John in my life. So Mr. Skews. So he called me and asked me to go and see him. And so it's not close, Leeds, so quite a way away. Just drove up and saw him. Got around his beautiful, let's say, oak, I think, table. And John Hornby Skews have got such a brilliant distribution. I think they're the largest distributor in the UK. Always been immensely professional. It's run how a business needs to be run, all that kind of stuff. And even to this day, I work very, very closely with them because there is that understanding of the value that I can bring, even though it's sold in all the discount shops and everything else, they just the fact they still feel there is a value in keeping some of the old school, like, oh man, if you look at their Facebook page, look at how they connect with the users, just with the vintage brand, just look at how they make that effort to connect with their audience. They understand the human values and the it's weird, like some do, some don't. And Mr. Skews, of all the people, is somebody who understood about human value. So, and that's what I loved about him. And he sat me around that table and he said, look, Richard, it went to the vote and it didn't get voted through. So I think the caveat was, it wasn't all my fault. But I know that he was pretty much top of the tree of it. I'm sure if Mr. Skews didn't want something to happen, I can't imagine it happening. But let's take his word absolutely and say he was one of many voters. So he said, look, what you got to understand is half of the people that are on your scheme stabbed me in the back. They used to work for me. They used to work for me in my sales team. So they got my experience, they got my contacts, they got all of the know-how, how to run the business, because I gave it them. And then they set up in business. And the main director was the director of Tanglewood. And then the other director was the director of Barnes and Mullins. Both of whom, like the two other big players on this scheme, were both people who Mr. Skews obviously didn't have an awful lot of time for. At that moment in time, I presume, I can't say he didn't, but so he was like, Richard, he said, I have nothing but respect for what you're trying to do. He said, I respect your drive, what you've put into it, the motives. He said, but this is the real world. This is the world we're living in. And he says, I cannot rub shoulders with those people. And I cannot have something that involves them. And at which point he offered for me to do it for him. Now, this should be the great news, right? This should be the point where, and so he says, bring me a quote. He said, give me whatever you need to do. He said, we would embrace this. They had more than enough brands to do this themselves. At the time, they had the Gear magazine, which still runs. But so many brands within their structure. And the Museet scheme would have been absolutely wonderful. And it's another one of those philosophical things where let me tell you what happened. Then you can tell me what I should have done. So Mr. Skews asked me to go away, think about it, come up with a quote, and they will do it. Obviously, if the money's right, whatever, it was a business proposition. And I'm hoping you can already understand what my next point is going to be, which is that I called my brother, Antony, who was clearly resting everything on this, his future employment, everything, years of my life going into this. And I said to Antony, look, this is going to be hard for you to take on, but he's explained why it didn't get past first base. We have to just accept that our perspective we can't expect the whole world to run because we have a view and we have a point of view. Just because it's our desire doesn't mean it's got to be someone else's. And our needs can't trump everyone else's. That's basically what we said. And I said, but he has offered, and I almost didn't even want to tell him. And he says, but he has offered for us to do it for him, and the opportunity's there. So if you want to do this for JHS, but obviously I knew that was going to be the next words out of his mouth, which is that, yeah, but you told me this was something that would. But if we do that, we are basically becoming everything that we're trying to stop. Okay, if you think about it. If we had sold this scheme to JHS, a scheme that is designed to provide to an ecosystem of the industry, would become an ecosystem of John Hornby Skew's customers and whatever lies within that, which isn't the same thing. And not only is it not the same thing, but it's just another way of providing leverage, dominance in the industry for one company. You end up with that. You're basically becoming part of the problem again. You're becoming part of the fuel to grow businesses, to be sold on to other businesses. And so that is my 1 hour and 18 minutes so far of story to highlight, going back to what we're seeing now in the industry. And just to finish off that, because I feel like I need to say about Mr. Skews, I couldn't have been more grateful for that meeting. And he said, you'll go on to do, my hairs are going up on my arms here. If you can see that, it's making me tingle thinking about it. Probably a combination of sweat from got the air conditioning playing, absolutely roasting. It's probably a bit of cold sweat going through here. What was I saying? He just, the way he did it was with such dignity, and I could see he knew he was going to have to let me down, and he knew that it was going to be. And he even said, "I know this means everything. I know this means everything to you. I know what you're going to feel about this." I hope I made it clear to him. Well, I know it would have been clear to him, even though I don't think we really had discussion about it as such. But I mean, there's things I'd like to tell you, but I'll get all silly. So yes, so none of what I've said about Mr. Skews is in any way derogatory. It is very much about actually a highly proud man who's put the legwork into building his business for his family, his legacy, which is firmly in place. The amount of people, you know, who have admired him and spoke out for him when he passed away was so. I won't have that. I won't get that. Oh God. There'll probably be a little party on my grave when I'm gone. But he certainly had everybody's, you know, lovely stories came out, anecdotes. So everyone had. In fact, there were so many anecdotes that came out. You think, oh, I thought I had a bit of a special relationship, but that was the man he was. He sent me a book. He had a biography. He did a little personal biography, I think it's called, and he sent me that, like a book about his life in the industry, and he signed it and said, you know, put a message in there. I mean, maybe he sent one to everybody, you know, but that was, you know, again, but it's just another side. Even if he sent one to everybody, I mean, it might make him look a bit, but he, you know, I like to think it was he did it. He wanted to send it out to people that he felt he had a connection with. So, and I continue to do great business with his son-in-law. So, Dennis. So, thank you for everything you do for me, Dennis. If you are reading this, this is, you know, this is the history. You know that. This is actually about being mindful of the world we live in. We all have to shape it out and work it out. And I try and make sure that, obviously, wherever I can, I try and keep that human connection with every brand. I'm always trying to ensure that whatever tiny amount of power I have in any conversation, which is none, but I'll always be very vocal about the human side and the importance to keep, wherever we can, businesses that are worthy. That, you know, I'm not talking about just keeping shops open for the sake of it, but there is a direction that we're going in, which we're now seeing, and it's becoming clearer and more obvious. And maybe if we go back in time, people would give that a second look. But it's what was there anything else to add to that? Then we didn't do it. We didn't. You know, it all got closed down. I think that was the point where, without making children feel too guilty from above, I think I just had, my brain just couldn't cope anymore. So that was kind of, it was a whole combination of dealing with the knowledge about brands, the whole marketing, and that I always call it this veneer. Seeing that most things that you see just don't even mean anything, and that all just happens now on YouTube every day. So we're hearing about guitar shops closing down. There's lots of reasons why guitar shops close down, and I've heard lots of comments about, I mean, GAC, that's a whole separate video. I think KDH pretty much covered it pretty well, from what I remember. But I mean, I do business with one of the guys that set GAC up, and he did actually say he'd happily chat to me about his good memories of GAC and what he felt their values were in the original time, and also their connection with the local community. GAC was all about the connection with the local musicians, the local. They were the hub of the hub of their community, GAC. But they sadly got abused by corporate stuff, you know, and they got milked dry, and it wasn't because of the state of the industry. So what happened with GAC was very much the state of the industry is a sideshow, but it wasn't the reason why they went out of business. What's going to happen with every shop that closes? You're going to get the same storyline unfolding. So it's going to kind of mask the real picture of individual circumstances. And what I would like, if there's any dealer watching this, if any dealer happens to be watching this, I would basically say, just add up the amount of business that those companies were doing, all of the ones that have gone out of business lately. Some which I haven't got the greatest sympathy for, and some that I do, and everything else. But all of them combined come to an awful lot of millions of pounds, many tens of millions of pounds, and that money is still being spent. So rather than getting depressed about the current climate and the current, there's always going to be something that you can focus on that's a negative. And instead of looking at the negative, think about what you're doing every single day to make your business better. And I have to kind of laugh to myself that I've been doing this 30 years. Not really. I mean, I see more people advertising the fact they do setups on guitars, and far more than I used to. And I really obviously hope that there's no question that my involvement in the industry has been part of that. Absolutely no question at all. No one ever used to advertise they did setups on guitars. And I would genuinely think that because people are aware of the business I do with the companies I do deal with, and they see what is at the heart of what makes my business successful, at very least they advertise the fact they set up guitars, but they don't think of the trouble is they don't do the full thing. They don't see it through. They don't think about, well, you can't say you do that if you are selling that many guitars every day, because it's obvious you're not. So don't say stuff you can't do. So we can all say things, and all that veneer can always be there. And of course, there are shops that really do stuff and really do, and you have to find those. I'm not going to. I don't even know who they are, but they obviously exist. I'm trying to provide balance, is what I'm saying. But does the owner of the business talk to his customers all day long, and late at night, midnight? I just know that what I do is put myself on the line when I'm talking every single day. I put my personality, if you like, under scrutiny every day. And I think, considering the exposure I've given the public of myself for 30 years, I'm quite proud of the critique and the people that don't like what I do, because I know this is who I am. This is the life I've led. And if you want to judge me over, how I spoke to someone who was probably the most cretinous person on the planet, who treated me with complete contempt, or more importantly, may have treated a member of staff with complete contempt, or shown lack of any kind of empathy or kindness of any degree. Well, crikey, those are such ridiculously rare moments that I wouldn't change. And if you want to criticize someone for that, but just try and understand, this is me. That history I've just given you, the hour and whatever the hell it's been, is who you're dealing with at Richard's Guitars. And the team that I have all have that human connection, all want that desire to look after people. And I would say to any shop that's watching, it's not rocket science. Just believe in what you're selling. Look at the products that you have on the wall and tell me you absolutely believe in all those products. The reality is, most of those products you probably bought because you got them on a good deal, someone's offered you a favor, or they're easy to sell, and you're happy to make a 10% margin because you're competing against Fender, who's selling them direct, and you don't believe a word of the BS that they're giving you every day. But this whole reinvention of the wheel, it's they treat people like, I'm going off again, but I'm done. I think I've told you about the general idea of the video. Was I saw the decay, the disruption that could occur if the internet was not harnessed, I suppose, by shops, but really I wanted to maintain this ecosystem. So if we could have maintained that ecosystem, I think the place would just be nicer. I think we'd all be looking forward to, think of your local pub and just think, I could have gone to my pub website and seen who's playing at the weekend. I mean, it's just lovely. And then you could have read about them and then looked at it was there, it existed, and it wasn't to be. And And then who would need a big corporate website, or who would need... Anyway, I'm rambling now because my son's... I don't know whether I've edited it out or not, but my son's been in twice and scrambled my brain. I'm so hot and tired. And yeah, but hopefully I'll be able to pull that together and shape it into something that is enjoyable to watch and gives you a bit of knowledge about the background. I think it was something to be proud of, and I really was proud of it. I saw it working. I used it as a dealer, and it's a part of my life that I'm really, really proud of. And I'm proud for everything it stood for. And sadly, I think the world that it was trying to grab hold of or maintain is already lost in many ways. And we all need to kind of think about where this is all heading. So, okay, I'm not trying to be depressing. I'm just saying that's the challenge, to keep connected as best we can. Okay, cheers then, guys. That's me done. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.